Right now, there's a fierce battle for the most important resource that you and I will ever have. But I'd like to start us on a lighter note. And with that, I'd like to ask you to please indulge me in an experiment. Would you please raise your hand if you checked your phone or tablet last night before falling asleep? Would you please raise your hand if you checked your phone or tablet within 5 minutes of waking up this morning? Interesting. What I'm about to tell you today applies to most connected devices. But the reason I was asking about your phone specifically is because I believe they are the worst culprit. I believe that we've created a digital leash to something that is always by our side and always connected. In fact, we touch our phones more than 2,600 times a day. And I caught myself doing that a lot. I feel compelled to touch it, to check email, to see if anyone's liked that photo that I posted or commented on that clever thing that I wrote this morning. And it's kind of ironic that I'm telling you about this because I've spent the last 10 years as a digital marketer. But I also noticed that it didn't feel right. I noticed that it was starting to affect my ability to stay focused and to keep working on things that are meaningful to me that were even this talk. I found that it was starting to affect my ability to spend quality time with my 2-year-old daughter. And at times, it was even starting to make me feel unhappy. And it turns out that I'm not alone. Some of you might have felt the same way at some point in time, as did most of the entrepreneurs, friends, and parents that I talk to. And I was curious why that is. And here's what I found. When you get a like, a notification, a text, or if you unlock a new level of Candy Crush, your brain releases a burst of neurotransmitters. These are oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. These are chemicals that make you feel love, happiness, and joy. They also make you feel motivated to want more of those types of feelings. So what happens is that you unlock a new level of Candy Crush, you get a hit. You post a photo and someone likes it, you get a hit. You check your email before you go to bed, you get a hit. And every one of those interactions, especially if it's coupled with a unlocking of some kind of new content, or if there's some kind of a recognition of your existence, like for example, if you get a text message from someone, you get rewarded by a burst of those neurotransmitters. And a tiny fountain of joy fills your brain. And as this continues to happen, interaction, reward, a compulsion loop is created. And this is why people can't stop using their phones while they're driving, or at the gym, or at the dinner table. It's the same kind of behavior seen in nicotine and heroin addicts. I'm going to assume some of you just felt a little jolt. That's my gift to you. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is that there are also side effects to this. So what happens is that once your brain gets used to that level of stimulation and that level of neurotransmitters, if the stimuli ever drops, it actually starts exhibiting the symptoms of withdrawal. So you actually start feeling anxiety, in some cases depression. There's even a name for this. It's called nomophobia, which is a new term for people that experience a fear of being without their phone. And it was starting to happen to me. But I don't want to feel that way. There are much more important things in this world than to keep checking social media feeds for likes and to keep salivating for that next notification. And so my way to break that digital leash was to go analog. I just heard another ding. Was to go analog. And so what I ended up doing is I did a lot of research and a lot of reading, and I looked at different habits and practices and mindfulness porn. You know, those articles that say these are 5 ways that you can be more mindful. And I tried a lot of different things, and I failed a lot of things, and I finally settled on 3 simple practices that have really made a big difference in my life. And those are dedicate, connect, and create. One of the things that I deeply believe in, and this is what I've come to find in all of the work that I've done, is that your job doesn't define you, but your work does. And so dedicate is a practice of setting aside time to do things that are important and meaningful to you. And what I do is I write and I podcast, and I interview people about meaningful work. And I share my own experiences and my own journey. And I do this as a passion project. So I still have my business and I still have my clients, but this is something that I take the time out to do because it's really important to me. And I started with 2-hour time blocks. And I like 2 hours because it has a start, it has an end. And 2 hours is enough time to really dig into something and really get focused and do some work. And sometimes, you get really into the flow of things and 6 or 8 hours will go by and you'll completely lose a sense of time. I've done that many times. I'll forget to go to the bathroom. I'll forget to go to eat. Granted, it's a little bit harder now with the 2-year-old running around at home. And it was after one of those marathon sessions where I ended up writing an article about people doing meaningful work later on in life. And then a week later, I got this email. So I've read this a couple of times, and I'm going to try to hold it together here. So here's the email that I got. Thank you for the second ACT article. For the last 2 weeks, I've been trying to find the time to connect with my boss and let him know that I will be leaving my current full-time position. My intention is to create my own company and still represent my current boss. As I was reading your article today and identifying with everything, he popped his head into my office and asked me to join him for lunch. So now the opportunity to speak with him has presented itself. I've read your article twice so far and will read it one more time before leaving for lunch. I'm 54, so I have maybe 30 more years left to make my mark and leave my legacy. I want to spend time working on things that really matter to me, and your article arrived in my life at the perfect time. So this wouldn't have happened had I not set the time aside to research, to write, and to publish that article. Time that could have been spent scrolling through screens like I've done many, many times before. And so for you, it might not be writing articles, but it could be something else that has taken a backseat because you don't have enough time. The next practice that I found that really made a big impact for me was Connect. Last year, I interviewed this amazing young entrepreneur, Kylie Toe. She has spent the last 4 years building an organization that helps women transition careers into technology and entrepreneurship. She's had coding workshops and networking events, and late last year, she ran her first big event. It was called the Geeky Summit. She had hundreds of attendees, dozens of volunteers. There were international speakers from Amazon, Google, and IBM. And some attendees were as young as 8 and 11. And that was really, really awesome. So when I interviewed her, I asked her, how did you get to here? How did you build this community? And she said, I built my tribe one-on-one conversation at a time. And this is a practice that I also adopted. So if there's somebody that I want to connect with, or if I go to a meeting, you can't focus on the other person if both of you are constantly compelled to keep checking your phone. So what I ask that we do is I ask that we turn our phones off or set them on top of each other somewhere out of sight, because this changes the nature of the conversation. It becomes more real. And it's also a promise that you make. I promise to be here with you. And it's the same kind of thing that you could do with your family and at home life as well. So one of the things that we used to do, we used to have a really bad habit of checking our phones and tablets at breakfast and at dinner while we're all sitting together. And you see this happening all the time. If you go to a restaurant, a family will roll in, and while they're waiting for their food, everybody's on their phone in their own world somewhere else. And so we stopped doing this. Now what we do when we get together for a meal, we ask each other, what is one good thing that happened today? And that was an idea that I picked up from a book called Life is Good. And it's a really great way to connect with each other at the end of the day. And the last practice is create. A couple of years ago, I picked up urban sketching. It's basically a practice when you draw or paint on location. So people, places, fire hydrants, lamps, whatever you see. And what I like to do is I take my sketchbook and I go out to a coffee shop and I secretly sketch people. And so it can sometimes lead to some interesting encounters. And so a few weeks ago, I was trying to draw this older gentleman who was sitting on the other end of the room from me. And I was really into it. I was trying to get the eyes right and the eyebrows and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I look up and I see this woman making a beeline straight for me. And we locked eyes. And this is one of those moments, just to kind of explain it to you, is that if you were secretly trying to take a picture of someone and then you get caught. And I got caught. But lucky for me, she was really, really nice. And so she asked me if I've been painting for a long time. And next thing you know, she was taking pictures of my drawings and of me. And then we're taking selfies together. And I'm telling her about this guy that I was trying to paint. And all of a sudden she goes, "Hey, Frank, come over here. Check it out. It's you." So a few minutes later, and a bit of an awkward moment later, we parted ways. And they walked away with a sketch of Frank. And I felt happy. And I find that it was this creative expression, the act of building something, doing something creative. It really encompasses, it's really immersive. It takes all of your attention when you're doing something like that. And that, I found, was instrumental in breaking that compulsion to keep checking my phone every 5 minutes. And so it was these 3 simple practices, dedicate, connect, and create, that have helped me take back time to do things that are meaningful to me, to connect with myself and connect with the people around me. And I hope that they inspire you to do the same, because there's one more very important thing that I wanted to share with you. When I was doing this research, I came across a few studies from Pew Research and Nielsen. And they say that an average smartphone owner in North America spends 2.5 hours on their phone every day. So if you take that number and you extrapolate it over an average lifespan of 81 years, and assuming that you'll also sleep at some point, it's 13 years of our lives that we'll spend staring at a phone screen. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because each one of us has a finite amount of time. And time is the most precious resource that you can never get more of. My hope is that you'll take some of the things that we talked about today and take some time back to do things that are meaningful and important to you. Maybe you can write a book. Maybe you can go out and take photos. Maybe you can fix a broken relationship. Or maybe you can go out to a coffee shop and secretly sketch people. Because at one point in time, we all run out of time. Life is short. Look up.